Okay, let's unpack this. Just imagine this scenario for a second. An envelope shows up. Maybe you can see a bill through the little window.
Yeah.
Or like an email notification pops up from your bank.
Yeah.
Urgent subject line, maybe.
Yeah, that feeling.
Do you get that?
Yeah.
That clench, that immediate urge to just put it down.
Set it aside, deal with it later.
Right. Tell yourself, oh, I'll get to it tomorrow, or maybe never. Or maybe you quickly open your banking app, see a balance that just makes your stomach lurch.
And slam it shut just as fast.
Exactly. Trying to unsee it. If any of that sounds familiar to you listening, well, you're absolutely definitely not alone.
Thanks.
Our sources today really dig into this whole experience. There's research from MX, for instance, that suggests nearly, 1 in 4 consumers in the U.S.?
Yeah, almost a quarter. They actively agree they avoid checking their finances if they possibly can.
Wow. 1 in 4.
It's more than just like a little worrying, isn't it? It really shines a light on a pretty widespread way people behave. And it's not just, putting off chores or procrastinating.
Right. It feels different.
It does. The sources we looked at explore this as something, deeper, a kind of withdrawal. Some are calling it financial numbing or financial avoidance.
Financial numbing.
It's basically a state where you consciously or maybe subconsciously just disengage from your financial reality.
Financial numbing. Yeah, the name itself feels kind of heavy, doesn't it? Like you're deliberately trying to dull the senses to avoid pain, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Turning down the volume.
Yeah, turning down the volume on your money life because the sound is just too jarring. So, okay, our mission for this deep dive is really to pull this behavior apart. We want to get a clear handle on what exactly financial avoidance is, get a better picture of how common it actually is here in the U.S., and really probe into the reasons why we do this. What are the psychological roots?
Yeah, the why behind it.
Exactly. And then look at the consequences, which sound pretty serious based on what you're saying.
Yeah.
Where's most likely to be affected? And maybe most importantly, what can actually be done about it? What steps can people take to move past this based on what the sources suggest?
And we've got a good range of insights here. We're drawing from consumer behavior studies, like that MX one you mentioned, detailed psychological research, and even, big national health surveys like data from the NIH. So trying to build a really complete picture.
Okay, good. So it's not just one angle.
No, not at all. It really bridges, personal habits, psychological stuff, social pressures, even physical health. The sources really lay out these connections, and it's illuminating, but also, frankly, a bit sobering. Shows just how tied together our money situation is with our overall well-being.
All right, so let's start with the basics then. Let's put a frame around it. What is financial numbing or financial avoidance, as the sources describe it? You said it's a tendency to withdraw attention.
Yeah, or to actively avoid checking on your financial status. It's that conscious decision to look away.
Look away from what specifically?
Well, it could be a physical bank statement, or an email alert, an app notification, even just a conversation about money sometimes. It's knowing the information is there, knowing it's relevant to you, but actively choosing not to engage with it. It's the opposite of, checking your balance, opening that bill, figuring out your net worth. It's the act of not doing those things.
Okay. And you mentioned this connects to a broader psychological idea, psychic numbing.
Yeah.
One of our sources, the Wikipedia entry, talks about this.
That's right, yeah. Psychic numbing is it's a pretty well-documented psychological response. It happens when people, or even whole societies, are faced with threats or experiences that are just so huge, so overwhelming, maybe traumatic, that the mind just instinctively kind of dials down the emotional response. It's like a defense mechanism, really. Stops you from being totally paralyzed by fear or despair.
Okay, like a circuit breaker.
Sort of, yeah. The Wikipedia source mentions withdrawing attention from really traumatic past stuff or from future threats that seem massive, huge in scale, but maybe feel unlikely right now, like the risk of some huge disaster.
Things like, I don't know, the sheer scale of climate change. Or maybe the abstract idea of a pandemic before it hits. Things that are almost too big to really wrap your head around emotionally, so the brain just
kind of checks out,
Yeah.
The mind just struggles to process the sheer size of the potential impact. And interestingly, that Wikipedia source actually lists financial and economic collapse as one of those potential massive future threats that can trigger this psychic numbing.
Oh, interesting. So it's not just like asteroids and stuff. It's money too.
Right. So when you bring that down to the individual level, Financial avoidance starts to look a lot like a personal version of psychic numbing.
Oh.
It's your brain's attempt to cope when you're faced with what feels like an overwhelming reality, or maybe just the threat of personal money problems. You know, that debt piling up, not enough savings, that unexpected car repair.
These can feel like your own personal threat of collapse.
Right.
And that can trigger this diminished response, this sort of emotional detachment when you're actually confronted with the facts, the numbers, the balances, the due dates.
So it's not just being disorganized or forgetting. It's more like an active, maybe subconscious, but still active psychological defense, shielding yourself from feeling something painful about money.
That's a good way to put it, like putting your hands over your ears and closing your eyes, financially speaking.
Yeah.
The mind's just trying to protect itself from what it perceives as pain by, well, disengaging from the source.
And just how common is this in the U.S., I mean? We started with that 1 in 4 figure. Can you give us a bit more detail from that MX research?
Sure. Yeah, the MX research put some solid numbers on it. They surveyed consumers and found that, yes, 22% of the people they asked explicitly agreed with the statement that they avoid checking their finances if possible.
22%. That's a lot of people. A huge chunk of the adult population actively trying not to look at their money. It really is. Millions of people potentially living in this state of, deliberate non-engagement with a really core part of life.
Yeah.
And the data gets even more interesting when you break it down by generation.
Well, how so?
Well, the MX research showed that this avoidance is even more common among younger groups. A full 33% of Gen Z respondents reported this tendency.
1/3.
1/3 of Gen Z. And 28% of millennials said the same.
Wow. Nearly a third of millennials, too. So, like, a massive chunk of young adults who are trying to build their financial lives while actively trying to ignore them.
It seems that way.
I mean, when you think about the economic situation they're facing, student debt, crazy housing costs, wages not keeping up, it almost it makes a grim kind of sense, doesn't it, that they might feel overwhelmed enough to just numb out.
The environment they're in definitely throws up some major financial hurdles that could easily feed into feelings of being overwhelmed and wanting to avoid it all. And, it's important to remember this isn't just about big crisis moments. NPR touches on the more everyday examples, too.
Like what?
Like that feeling of a debt hangover, maybe after the holidays or a vacation, or just the general bill-paying blues.
Oh, yeah. That Sunday night feeling.
Exactly. Those are like milder versions of the same avoidance impulse. The discomfort tied to the task makes you just put it off.
Right. You should sit down and deal with the bills, but suddenly cleaning the bathroom seems really appealing.
Precisely. And the sources are pretty clear that this cuts across income levels, too.
It's not just people struggling.
No. The reasons might differ, sure. Someone with plenty of money might avoid looking at their investments when the market's down. Someone else avoids bills they know they can't pay. But the behavior of avoidance itself, that feeling of discomfort or threat, that can hit anyone. Everyone runs into financial stuff they'd rather just ignore.
Yeah, that feels very human, wanting to turn away from difficult things. Okay, so let's dig into the why then. Why does this avoidance take root? What are the main drivers, according to the sources?
Well, the most immediate one, and it comes up in several sources, Bankrate, NPR, the NIH study, is simply that dealing with personal finances is inherently stressful for a lot of people.
Right. Money stress is real.
Absolutely. Just thinking about money can trigger pretty significant anxiety, worry, just discomfort for many.
And our brains are wired to avoid stress and anxiety, aren't they? So avoiding the task gives you that quick hit of relief, even if it's temporary.
Exactly. It's that classic trade-off. Feel better now, but potentially face bigger problems later. Short-term gain, long-term pain. Another really interesting point comes from that MX research again. It's about how people try to manage their money, which kind of paradoxically might actually feed into the problem.
Oh, so?
Well, they found that a surprisingly large group, 24% of consumers, still mainly use manual methods, like spreadsheets or even pen and paper.
Wow, 24% still using spreadsheets. With all the apps out there now that sync with your bank and everything, that seems like a lot of work.
It does seem counterintuitive, yeah. But MX asked why people do this, and the reasons are quite revealing about wanting control and understanding.
Okay.
So among those using manual methods, 65% said it's because it makes their finances easier to understand. They feel like physically typing it in gives them a clearer picture.
Right, the act of doing it yourself.
Yeah. And 57% said it gives them better control over their money.
Okay, that makes a bit more sense. You feel like you're actively engaging with the numbers. You see where everything is going because you put it there. It feels less like a black box.
Exactly. There's a tangible sense of doing something, but, and this is the key point from the MX research, there's a hidden cost.
Ah,
While these manual methods might give you that feeling of microcontrol or just completing a task by checking accounts only, as they put it, frame by frame.
like one transaction at a time.
Yeah, or looking at isolated statements. Consumers are, and this is a quote, likely missing the bigger picture.
Ah, the old can't see the forest for the trees problem. You know exactly what you spent on coffee last Tuesday, but you've got no clue about your overall cash flow, or if you're saving enough, or the cumulative impact of all those coffees over 6 months.
Precisely. You're zoomed in on the details, but losing the overall plot of your financial health. And making it even worse, the MX data also found that 14% of consumers said they don't track their finances at all.
14%. Not just manual, but nothing.
Nothing. Complete disengagement from even trying to monitor it.
Wow. That's a lot of people basically flying blind financially.
It really highlights the depth of the avoidance for some. And if we circle back to the psychology, that Wikipedia source on psychic numbing, it mentioned it's triggered by overwhelming stimuli.
Right.
Well, for someone who feels totally buried in debt or completely out of control financially, their situation is an overwhelming stimulus.
Makes sense.
And NPR brings in that evolutionary angle too, reminds us that our brains are, fundamentally wired for immediate gratification.
The marshmallow test, basically.
Sure, pretty much. Our reward centers light up more for immediate pleasure or the immediate end of pain than for some abstract idea of long-term security way down the road.
So avoiding the stress of looking at the bank account now feels good now. The reward for facing it, like future security, is delayed and just feels less real to that primitive part of the brain.
Exactly. It feels less compelling. So it's this constant battle, isn't it, between the part of your brain wanting immediate relief and the part that knows what's better long term.
And the right now often wins, leading to avoidance.
It's a powerful bias we have to actively fight against. So, yeah, the roots are tangled. The basic stress of money, the weird appeal of manual tracking that obscures the big picture, total non-tracking for some, and just our fundamental wiring towards avoiding immediate discomfort.
Okay, that paints a really clear picture of the why. So now, the consequences. What actually happens when we consistently numb ourselves financially? What's the real impact? Financially, yes, but maybe otherwise too.
Right. And this is where that big NIH study comes in really strong. They used data from the 2018 National Health Interview Survey that's over 22,000 U.S. adults, a huge sample.
Okay.
And the main finding is pretty stark, really unambiguous. Higher financial worries are significantly associated with higher psychological distress among U.S. adults.
Okay, that seems logical, I guess. Worrying about money makes you distressed, but having the data from that many people really nails it down.
It absolutely confirms that link with really solid nationally representative data, but the study goes deeper than just that correlation. It makes a really critical distinction.
What's that?
It emphasizes that it's the subjective financial worries.
Subjective meaning?
Meaning your personal perception of how bad things are, your emotional response to your financial situation. That subjective feeling is more strongly linked to mental health outcomes than the objective facts alone, like your exact income or the precise amount of debt you have.
Wait, so how you feel about your money situation matters more for your mental health than the actual numbers on the page?
According to this research, yes, more predictive anyway.
That's profound. So two people could have the exact same salary, same debt load, but if one feels completely stressed and overwhelmed by it, and the other feels like they're managing okay, their mental health could be totally different.
Precisely. And the NIH study explains why this might be. Those objective numbers, income, debt, they don't capture the whole story, right? They don't capture the nuances of someone's life or the personal meaning behind those numbers.
Like cost of living differences or supporting family.
Exactly. The study notes people with similar incomes can have hugely different worry levels based on their specific spending habits, their cultural background around money, where they live, critical costs like healthcare, housing, childcare, how you feel about it all, your perceived ability to cope, your sense of security or insecurity. That seems to be what really counts for mental well-being.
So it's not just being objectively poor or having massive debt that causes the distress. It's the worry itself, which is super personal and subjective. That really changes how you think about financial stress, doesn't it?
It fundamentally shifts the focus. It's not just an external numbers game. It's an internal, emotional, psychological experience. And the consequences of that psychological distress, whether it comes from objective hardship or subjective worry, they're serious. They go way beyond just feeling bad.
How so?
The NIH source directly links psychological distress to a whole range of nasty health outcomes. Things like emotional exhaustion, think burnout, a reduced immune response, you get sick more easily, an increased risk of heart disease and other cardiovascular problems, and even, in the long run, increased mortality, a shorter lifespan.
Whoa. Okay. That's staggering. So consistently avoiding your finances because it's stressful. It's not just inconvenient or might lead to late fees. The chronic stress, the psychological distress from unaddressed money worries could actually be harming your physical health. Seriously, contributing to major illness, even shorten your life.
That's what the data suggests. The cost of financial numbing is potentially far, far higher than most of us probably imagine.
It really drives home that link between financial health and physical and mental health. You can't really separate them.
No, you can't. They're deeply interconnected. Ignoring problems in one sphere absolutely impacts the others. The stress doesn't just vanish because you ignore the bill. It often pops up somewhere else, maybe physically.
Okay. So, given how serious this is, we need to understand who's most at risk, who's most likely to feel this intense distress linked to money worries. Did the NIH study identify specific groups?
It did, yeah, quite clearly. The study looked at how different socioeconomic factors, demographics, kind of moderate that link between financial worries and distress.
Moderate meaning?
Yes.
They amplify it or reduce it?
Exactly. It draws on ideas like social stress theory. Basically, the idea that people in disadvantaged social positions often face more stressors overall, and they tend to have fewer resources, fewer buffers to help them cope effectively.
Right. If you don't have much of a safety net, any financial wobble feels much bigger, much more threatening.
Precisely. And the NIH study found specific groups where that connection between financial worries and psychological distress was significantly stronger, more pronounced.
Okay, who were they?
The key vulnerable groups identified were unmarried individuals, unemployed individuals, people in lower-income households, and renters.
Unmarried, unemployed, lower-income, renters. That's a pretty clear profile of higher risk.
Right.
Why those groups specifically? What did this study suggest?
Well, it points to things like having a job, having a higher income, owning your home. These act as powerful protective factors.
Yeah.
They often bring a sense of security, predictability, maybe more control over your environment and your future. They create a buffer, right? Against financial shocks, against everyday worries. So conversely, the groups lacking these protective factors, the unemployed, people in low-wage or precarious jobs, people without the stability of owning a home, they tend to have less access to crucial resources.
Like what kind of resources?
Could be less access to good health care, including mental health services, fewer personal savings to fall back on, maybe weaker social support networks compared to folks anchored by stable jobs or community ties through homeownership. And just, less power or agency when dealing with financial systems. So the same amount of financial worry just hits harder. It causes deeper distress when you have fewer tools to manage it.
So the stress isn't just adding up, it's almost multiplying for these groups. Their vulnerability makes the worry worse. It sounds like a really vicious cycle. Financial stress hits well-being, which then might make it even harder to improve the financial situation.
Absolutely. It can become a really tough feedback loop to break out of without some kind of help or support. Although, interestingly, the NIH study did find one potential buffer.
Oh, yeah. What's that?
Higher education levels. It seemed to potentially lessen the negative impact of financial worries.
So education isn't just about earning more, potentially. It might also give people better coping skills.
That's one idea the NIH source suggests. Maybe more educated folks are more aware of different stress management techniques. Or perhaps they're more likely to look for financial literacy help, or more willing and able to get professional support like financial counseling or therapy when they run into trouble.
So education might provide a broader toolkit for dealing with life's curveballs, including money ones.
Possibly, yeah. It's a compelling idea. Suggests that empowering people with knowledge and resources is really key, especially for those more vulnerable groups.
Okay, we've definitely painted a picture of the problem, its roots, its impact. It's kind of heavy stuff. Let's pivot now. How do we get out of this state, out of the numbing, the distress? What strategies do the sources offer? How can people break the cycle?
Right. This is where we shift from diagnosis to hopefully some solutions. If we go back to that psychological state we talked about, psychic numbing from the Wikipedia source, those characteristics like losing interest, feeling detached, kind of zombie-like or in a dead zone. A really critical point made there is the difference between just being overwhelmed and being completely shut down.
Overwhelm still sounds like you're trying, maybe flailing, but trying. Shut down sounds frozen, paralyzed.
Exactly. Overwhelmed, you're still actively struggling, looking for a way out, but that shutdown state is described as frozen. The brain actually struggles to make the connections needed to even start figuring out how to escape the dead zone. So the question is, is severe financial avoidance a form of that deeper shutdown? And the strategies are really aimed at pulling you out of that frozen state, getting you back into active engagement, even if it feels uncomfortable initially.
Okay, so how do you begin to thaw out, I guess? What's step one, according to the sources?
The absolute number one crucial first step, and NPR really emphasizes this, others too, is self-awareness.
You have to know you're doing it.
You have to. You can't change a behavior you don't even recognize. You have to acknowledge, okay, I'm avoiding this. I am feeling numb about my finances. That recognition is the starting pistol for change.
But how do you even get there when you're actively trying not to think about it, when you're deep in the numbing?
Well, NPR suggests a technique. They call it a transaction audit. But it's not just about logging spending. It's more like an audit of your feelings and behaviors around money.
Okay.
So you reflect on recent money interactions, paying a bill, buying something, glancing at your account. What feelings came up? When did you feel that spike of anxiety or that urge to just look away? What did you do instead of dealing with the money task?
Like noticing, when that credit card bill email came, I suddenly spent an hour scrolling social media.
Exactly. That kind of reflection helps you spot the triggers, the patterns, the escape routes you usually take. It makes the unconscious habit conscious.
I like that idea, auditing your feelings around money. Ties back to that subjective thing we discussed. It's not just the number, it's your reaction to the number.
Right. It shifts the focus away from shame, like I'm bad with money, towards observation. I notice I feel anxious when X happens, and then I do Y. Once you see the pattern, you have a chance to interrupt it.
Okay, so awareness first. What's next?
Another strategy involves mindfulness, but maybe with a bit of a twist for finances, as NPR suggests.
A twist.
Yeah, like pure detached mindfulness might be tough when you're staring down immediate money stress. So instead, the advice is to consciously try to shift your mindset. If you're stuck in what they call a deprivation mindset, always focusing on what you lack, what you can't afford, the sacrifices, try to actively pivot towards a positive outlook on potential gains.
So less, I can't go out, and more. Okay, by managing my spending now, I'm building towards that down payment, or I'm creating breathing room for the future. Something like that.
Exactly. Focusing on the positive future that responsible choices enable, rather than just the immediate pain of saying no. It's about engaging that long-term thinking part of the brain. NPR also suggests simple, practical behavioral alternatives.
Like what?
Like, instead of automatically buying that second coffee or another round of drinks, just practice pausing. Take a second. Quickly weigh the options, the short-term pleasure versus, say, the feeling of control or progress towards a goal.
Or swapping out expensive habits for enjoyable, low-cost ones. If your social scene is all pricey dinners, maybe suggest a potluck or a park hang instead. If you scroll online shops for fun, maybe try a library visit or a walk.
Right. Finding joy in things that don't trigger the financial anxiety, it's about substituting behaviors. These small shifts build new habits, new neural pathways. They prove to yourself that you can make different choices and that being financially mindful doesn't mean total misery, just more conscious decisions.
Okay, makes sense. What if the overwhelm is really strong, though? Like these steps feel too hard.
That's when seeking professional support becomes really crucial. Both Bankrate and the NIH study highlight this.
What kind of support are we talking about? Financial advisors?
Yeah.
Therapists?
Could be either, or both, really. Primarily financial counseling or financial therapy. A professional, like a certified financial planner or maybe a nonprofit credit counselor, can give you that practical help budgeting, debt management strategies, savings plans.
Getting the numbers under control.
Exactly. The NIH source specifically mentions that financial pros can help clients manage their needs better, which leads to feeling more secure and, importantly, less worried. But because money and psychology are so tangled.
Yeah.
For many people, the money problems are either made worse by or maybe even stem from psychological issues. So the NIH study also notes that financial professionals can play a role in suggesting when maybe seeking mental health support would be beneficial. Recognizing that therapy could help address the underlying anxiety, the avoidance patterns, the emotional distress that makes dealing with money feel impossible.
So it's potentially a two-pronged approach.
Yeah.
Practical help for the finances and maybe psychological support for the feelings and behaviors driving the problem.
Yeah, recognizing it's often not just a math problem. It's behavioral, it's emotional. And the sources also point a finger, gently perhaps, at institutions.
Banks, credit card companies.
Yeah, financial providers. The MX research argues they have an opportunity and obligation to actually design things that make managing money less stressful, easier for people.
How could they do that?
Yeah.
How can a bank help with financial numbing?
By building better tools, basically. MX talks about intuitive, integrated experiences, things that make it easy for you to see your whole financial picture at a glance, not just scattered transactions.
Like a really good dashboard.
Exactly. Delivering that sense of clarity and control that people are maybe trying to get from their manual spreadsheets, but doing it efficiently, digitally, and comprehensively. Clear spending categories, maybe proactive alerts about upcoming bills or low balances, ways to track savings goals right there.
Making it feel less overwhelming and more manageable.
Right. And the good news, according to MX, is that people want this. Their study found 55% of U.S. consumers said they'd be willing to give their main financial institution access to more of their data if it meant getting a significantly better, more integrated, more helpful experience in return.
So it's not that people are inherently anti-data sharing, maybe. They just want to see the benefit. They want tools that actually help them feel in control, which could then pull them out of that numbing state.
That seems to be the message. It's a clear signal to the industry about what could really help.
Yeah.
And really, when you look at all these strategies, the self-awareness, the mindset shifts, the behavior changes, getting professional help, having better tools, they all kind of circle back to one core idea, regaining a sense of control.
Control, that seems key.
It really does. The Wikipedia source mentioned that a sense of control is vital for coping with overwhelming threats. And the NIH study identified control as a major protective factor against psychological distress.
So the way out of financial numbing isn't necessarily about having perfect finances overnight. It's more about taking those small conscious steps to feel like you have some agency again, like you're back in the driver's seat, even if you're just starting the engine.
Exactly that. Moving from being frozen and passive in that dead zone back into an active, engaged relationship with your money where you feel like you can actually influence things.
Wow. Okay, this has been a really thorough deep dive, hasn't it, into something that feels both common and really impactful. We've talked about what financial avoidance and numbing actually are, connected them to bigger psychological ideas. We've seen the data on how widespread it is, especially for younger folks in the U.S. We've dug into the complex why stress, brain wiring, even how we track things.
Right, the roots of it.
Then the serious consequences for mental and physical health. Who's most vulnerable? And thankfully, we've discussed practical ways to start breaking that cycle. Personal steps, professional help, even what banks could do.
I think the main takeaway, really reinforced across all the sources we looked at, is pretty clear. Avoiding your money worries might feel better for a minute.
Yeah, that temporary relief.
But it doesn't make the problems go away. In fact, it usually digs the avoidance habit in deeper, makes the underlying stress worse, and can seriously harm your overall well-being, psychologically and physically. So, choosing to face your finances, even just taking tiny steps, it's not just about being responsible with money. It really comes across from this research as a fundamental act of self-care, self-preservation even.
Framing it as self-care, that does shift the perspective, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It makes opening that bank statement feel less like a punishment and more like something you're doing for yourself, for your own health, your future.
It puts your well-being right at the center, which is where it should be. Your financial health isn't separate from your life. It's woven right through it.
Okay, so with all that in mind, here's a thought for you listening to maybe carry with you after this deep dive wraps up. Considering this really strong link that the sources show between your money life and your overall mental, even physical health, what's one single, small, manageable step, something you could do today, maybe even right now, to engage with one financial task Or maybe just one piece of financial information that you know you've been actively avoiding.
It doesn't have to be the biggest, scariest thing on your list. Not at all. Maybe it's just opening that one email from the bank you've been ignoring.
Or looking at just one bill.
Or maybe just writing down, say, 3 things you spent money on yesterday. Just that one small act of facing it. That's the crucial first move out of the numbness. It's the start of reclaiming that control and really taking care of yourself.
What's that one small step for you today? Just think about it. And maybe if you can, take it. Start breaking that cycle.
Until next time, stay informed, stay curious, and take that step towards looking after your financial well-being.